Well, hello, my friend. It's good to have you stop back by the shop today. This week, we're working on this 1996 VT1100C. This came in for a no start, no run, no crank. When it did start, it was only running on one cylinder. The owner messed with the carburetors. He don't know if he did that right. It's first time doing that. So we got a lot to tackle on this bike. So if you have one of these or are curious about buying one of these, this would be a good video for you. Welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. So let me show you what our issue is, if I can find the key. Switch the key on, our headlights come on, our gauge pulls up. It's an aftermarket gauge. And you'll hear the fuel pump run. I've got the ignition switch set to run. I'll turn the key on. There's that pump. And when you hit the button, you get no crank. Where do we start? Well, first off, we want to start with the battery. If we don't have good power coming out or low power, that would be the issue. So we'll start with the battery side. We'll chase the battery all through the wires that's connected with the actual cranking of this bike. Now, I did notice that his switch here was off, but let me pull the clutch in. I think this has a clutch safety switch on it as well. Let's try that. Same thing. Now this also has a neutral safety switch and a kickstand safety switch. The kickstand is up and the neutral light is on the gauge. But let's start with the battery. Make sure we've got a good battery. When you put it on load, we want to watch the voltage to see how low that voltage drops. We can put a battery booster on it and see if it'll actually crank the bike that way. That way we know our battery is the issue. Then we can go on to why is it running on one cylinder. And 90s wiring. I tell you, when I get a bike in for wiring issues, I love it. I love the wiring side and diagnosing because it's like a puzzle. You got to figure out, and you got to put this piece with this piece and check this piece before you go to that piece. I actually love it. So let's dig into this. Let's get a voltage read on that battery, and let's look at what the voltage does when I actually turn the key on and especially push this button. Because I feel the pump changing tone. I see the light kind of dim down. I think our switch is working, but there is a starter relay in here, plastic. There is a fuse block we need to look at to make sure the relay is getting power. I might have a bad starter. Starter might be locked up. I don't know, might have a bad ground, might have bad connectors on the battery. There's a million things. All right, so with our voltage, I did notice these connectors were really rusted. This gentleman, I picked this bike up in town, it's local, new customer, and it was at a apartment complex. So some people don't have the luxury of being able to park their bikes out of the weather. If your bike's going to be out in the weather, especially if it's an old 90s bike electronically, get you a good weatherproof cover. That'll really help, just keep the elements out of places like that. So I'll clean these up a little bit. All right, 11.9, so that is actually pretty low. I like to have at least 12.2. When I turn this key on it and that pump running, it's probably gonna pull this way down. Yeah, so we're gonna have to put us a box on this, throw it to it, and see if that helps, because that's just not enough amperage to turn this bike over. So we're probably working with a bad battery, although the battery doesn't look that old. Yeah, 11.7. Let's do an engine start, which throws the juice to this for a good minute. And then we'll see, that should give it enough juice to actually turn the motor over if it's just a battery issue. Because at this time, I can't even check for spark. I can't really check for much at all. It is missing a couple of fuses. Looks like it's missing the parking fuse and the oil neutral fuse. However, my neutral light, and I believe my oil light does come on. Let's switch the key on. No. Okay. So still the same issue. So while the battery is probably bad, this box right here should have started it right up. It's a 50 amp engine start. It starts my big Cadillac Escalade. So let's take this seat off, see what some of the wiring is. Our relays should be around in that area. We can kind of look, start tracing some wires back. Starter relay, I want to make sure we're getting juice to that. And then when I hit that start switch, it should power that relay. It could just be a bad relay. Because when I push the button, I'm getting a change in power tones of what's running, which tells me the button's working. So I don't want to start up there. I want to start with, am I getting power to the starter? The starter could just simply be locked up. Our seat should be held on with just these 210 millimeters that holds the front seat on, and then the back seat kind of locks into there and should have a thing back here to lock it in. But this is a one-seater for now. That's how it, oh, come up to me. Where'd you go? The bolt said, I'm out of here. That one did too. It's just wanting to be fixed. I see tons and tons and tons of electrical tape and terrible bad connectors. So maybe our relays, let me get this side panel plastic thing off over here to see if maybe there's some relays under here, because I'm not seeing a whole lot of much except just wiring harness that's been chopped and chopped and chopped. Might even be under this air breather here, but let me show you what's going on in here. All right, so down in this very hard and old wiring harness, these are factory here, and then that is not. These are terrible to use. You see that exposed wire right there? Oh gosh, that's not good. Now green, it's probably a ground, but still that's not good. I hate these. Do not use these, guys. They're not good. So we'll be fixing that as well. That right there is why it's not good. You see that? Just pulled off easily like that. This blue harness indicates to me that goes to the new fuel pump. So we'll be fixing these, getting rid of this. Now I want to find that starter relay. Let me take the side cover off and see what's under there. The side cover just has this screw here in it. How do you just snap off? I guess you do. You got a lock here. Oh, duh. It's got a lock thing. Grab the key. I hope the key works for this lock as well. Yes. There we go. Okay, that's just like a little storage compartment there. That didn't help us out much at all. Maybe it's behind the battery. If it had been a snake, it would have bit me. It is right here. So there's a hot coming in that stays constant hot, running right here. I don't know how I didn't see that, but right there it is. And then we have our wires going in. This wire should go to my starter. That goes to the battery. Then you got your connecting here. Okay, so all I want to look for here is when I turn that key on, I know I'll get power here without the key on. But when I push the start button, it's power fed over here. That'll tell me real quick what's going on here. So here I've got 14.45. Here I should have nothing, but when I turn the key on, still should have nothing, but when I crank, if everything's working, no. This wire that runs to my starter is not getting power. So am I getting current going into this relay that when I push that button, it activates? That tells me if this relay is the issue or not. because if I'm getting the proper signal into this relay to activate the relay, and I have power going in, when I activate that relay, I should have power going out. I don't hear this or feel this clicking, and so I'm going to trace these two wires back up here, and I'm going to disconnect them right here at the connector. Pull that out. Okay, so there's my two connectors there for my signal. So now I should be able to probe inside the connector I just disconnected to see if I'm getting signal back. And I want to look at my diagram to see what feeds back into this. Is it just a connection is made between these two? Alright, so let's make sure that from our start button we have power coming up to this harness that is feeding into our starter solenoid. So right now I've got the wire, the negative wire from this multimeter. I want to set it to ohms, and here's my connector. The green red wire here is my ground, so I should get continuity immediately, and I do. So that means that this wire is operating as it should. Now I'll switch it over to volts. I'll leave my negative wire on my multimeter hooked to my negative battery cable, or battery side. Then I'll put my little test probe into my yellow and red wire. Now I shouldn't get any kind of voltage reading, I mean minor. Even when I hit the key over, I should not get, but percentages of volts. Now when I hit my starter button, I should get voltage. There we go, 13.4. I've got the battery charger still hooked up. So I know that I am getting the signal to that starter solenoid to actually operate. Now in the manual that I looked up, it had 4 wires running to the starter relay. And I'm not sure, this is actually not a relay, it's a solenoid. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. Maybe there's a relay before the solenoid, I'll go check. But I'm getting power all the way to the solenoid, which is the last step before the starter. So now here's what we know. We know we're getting power from the battery. We know we're getting the start button works. We know we're getting power back all the way to this. So what I want to do now is plug this back up. Now we have power from that connector, but do we have power that is actually running into that? There's my wire there, and I'll just poke this needle sensor thing through the wire, the actual harness rubber of the wire. Then I'll turn my key on. I'll hit my button. There we go. So I'm getting power all the way into this, but nothing coming out when it is connected. So my no start issue, I'm pretty confident, is in this. Now another test that I can do to verify that my starter is not locked up and it is indeed this is to take a screwdriver, and what I want to do is just make a connection between this and this. If that motor cranks, even with the key not on, it should crank, because I'm sending direct power from here from the battery straight to the starter motor. If that works, then it is indeed this starter solenoid. It's going to spark. You don't do it long. We're just testing it out. There we go. So that tells me starter motor is good. The bike is now cranking. It is indeed this starter solenoid. So we're going to need a new one. I don't want to order one thing and then it get in next week and then get it cranking, but then it won't do something else. Then I got to order something else again. We can make it crank, okay? We can make it crank. So right now, let's just keep trucking, get a list of things we might need for the bike. Since it's not running on both cylinders, I do want to check for spark. And so we can actually crank the bike here and check for spark. Somebody's having a good time, or somebody else is having a really bad time. all that shooting noise. All right, so I got the plug out, and that plug looks almost brand new. This might be the cylinder not running. NGK Iridium. Ooh, these are expensive. Ooh, careful now. Be careful with this. I'm going to set that right there, and we're going to look right down in here for any spark. I'll try to zoom you in, and I'll try to stand here to block the light. Now what I want to do is get my terminals ready to connect and crank. I do want to turn the key on and see if we get a spark. Very good. So our front is sparking, at least on this side. I think it's got dual plugs per head, doesn't it? Yeah, thought so. And I will go around and check all four because I don't want to start digging in on a carb issue if one side's not sparking. Now, since I got this out and the others can be a pain to get out, I'm just going to use this same plug. I know this plug's good now. And then I'll just go over here and we'll move over here. We'll set it up here. Ooh, don't shock me now. Key on. Yes, we do have spark. All right, let's go check those other sides. But if this side's sparking, this rear runs off the same coil and this front one runs off a different coil, but both sides run off the coil. So I'm going to say our spark is good. If our spark is good on both coils, then we should be able to hook the fuel pump back up and start the bike up, because once the bike started, I can just, stop cranking and the bike should run. I don't know how much fuel in it. The fuel is off. I'm going to go to reserve. I hear it gurgling. And a choke. Got a choke up here on the handlebar. I don't even feel the choke working. Oh, that's not good. Okay, so the choke doesn't work, but can we just get it to maybe burp off? It's a Honda. It should, right? Pull this other terrible connector off. I'm just going to twist the wires to the fuel pump back up. Make sure my key's off. All right. Now I'll turn the key on and we should get some kind of sputtering as we crank. Let's see. Okay, I smell gas. Let me go give it a little bit of throttle. Okay, dude, it's dead. You got it. Now, let's try it again. Okay, so we got it running. At the beginning, the reason I put my hand on each pipe is I wanted to feel the temperature of what was coming out of the pipes. I put my hand back here over the rear pipe and it was good and warm. We had just started it up. I don't know when this thing's run last. Down on the bottom pipe on the front, it was not blowing out any warm. It was ice cold. When I'd put my hand kind of cup over the exhaust to give it the most back pressure, it would pop my hand off. So that lets me know It's firing, it's just a fuel delivery issue with something in that front. Maybe the customer didn't set the float level high enough and the front is starving for fuel. Because I throttled it, you heard it pop and pop and crack, but when I throttled it, the front started warming up, and that pipe is almost just as hot as the rear. So it kicked in, it started running, and it sounded pretty good. Idle was a little high, but we're gonna have to fix that choke on that. The choke might be set up, and so this is definitely going to be a fuel issue. Since he just rebuilt it, I'm probably not going to order any parts for it. I want to contact him and say, hey, when you did the carb, did you buy a rebuild kit or not? If not, I'm going to order a rebuild kit, and then we'll rebuild these dual carburetor setups on this. I believe they're dual carbs. Yes, they are. So we've got one carb that feeds the rear, another carb that just feeds the front. So because of that, it could just be an issue with one of the carbs. So let's go ahead and tear these carbs off, and I want to see the condition of them. I want to see if they're rebuilt. That'll let us know when we order that starter solenoid, we just go ahead and order a rebuild kit as well. But hey, all right, we're getting places. Start taking the tank off and stuff. I was just noticing this doesn't even feel like it's attached to the cable here. So let's go ahead and just dig into this for now and see what's going on with this choke mechanism thingamajiggy. It's got two Phillips screws on the bottom on this, and then that top cap should lift off. One screw's longer than the other, the long one over here, the short one over here where it's shorter. Now we should be able to just raise this up. And I was correct. The cable is not connected at all. Oh gosh. What's been living in here? Okay. We will definitely clean those turn signals out. Turn those clean signals out. And that cable, that choke cable, let's see how that operates. Okay, that's the problem. That's why it broke. The choke cable is not choking. All right, so I've got a problem with this choke thing. Cannot find it anywhere. You think you'd be able to, but we can't. So we gotta kind of fabricate this to make this work. I think once we get the choke cable sliding good, it should be all right and it should work. But I got the starter solenoid ordered. Now, let's get into the carburetors on this and see what's going on there, because I think it's just an issue with maybe a float level, I'm hoping, or something clogged. But when we throttled it and it warmed up, it opened up and seemed like it started firing, but it had a lot of backfire in that front cylinder. So I think that carburetor for the front's going to be our issue. Before we get into taking all this off, let me show you what just came in to the shop. And maybe you can already tell by the glow on my face of what I have new here in the shop. So I mentioned lighting being an issue in my shop. And I tell you guys, I have the best subscribers in YouTube history. Every one of you guys support me, send me words of encouragement, talk about my videos and how you enjoy them and like them. And that alone keeps me going. But one of our subscribers heard about my need for lights, and they sent me this set of SkyText lights. And they are so nice. Just look, let me get back behind here. So now, when I'm working on a bike, you just won't see a spotlight, a little flashlight, or a little, mechanic's light. You'll see the whole thing illuminated and bright. And even with the shop, my problem was when I closed the shop doors, it got really dark in here. And man, I'm telling you, getting professional in here now. It's scaring me a little bit. But this was such a huge blessing and gift to the shop and the channel. And so thank you guys for things. I know everybody can't do stuff like this. And I know the Lord blesses some financially, blesses some with children, blesses some with good health, blesses some with knowledge and wisdom. And I know there's a lot of different gifts people have. But for those that have the heart to do this and just do it, I mean, it just showed up here today, is amazing. And I thank you so much. So this is a game changer as far as video quality. This is really going to help our channel. And the cool thing about it is it comes with these kind of remotes, and I can even change to like a warm light if I'm, just talking to you face to face during our lives. That'll really look good. And I can do this nice cool effect, and I can do, or the nice cold effect, like a bluish effect, white and that tan color. And then I can even, cut the intensity down. It's really super cool. There's buttons on here. I don't even know what to do. I'm afraid to touch them. And then this little triangle thing, I don't know. But what a huge blessing this is. So as I set the camera up now and start taking this off, you're going to see some great detail in the bike. So the subscribers that sent this, you're just a blessing to me. Thank you so much. And just look at that. So now in the winter, when I have these bay doors closed, I won't lose any quality in lighting, and I won't have to get my little shop lights out. I've only had them a day. So far, these things are working really good. I really like them. The stands, I guess if you were traveling and setting up, I don't know about the quality of the stands, but I really do like the lights and the things that they come with, and the little housing for them, and the brightness of it. It's not so bright that it blinds you. It's just right. And I like that. So thank you so much. So let's get into taking this tank off. Okay, so now this should be a 10 millimeter here on the back, one in the front. Then we'll take the fuel line off of this petcock here. And there may be a vent underneath. There's no fuel gauge on here, so I don't think there should be any wiring going up to the tank underneath. Man, these lights feel like I'm on a movie set. I'm gonna have to trim the nose hairs now. All right, can I get in here with this? There we go. Okay, now let me get this fuel line off, and then this tank, I assuming, should just lift off. There we go. All right, now, is there anything else connected to this? Is there a vent tube? Okay, there is a vent tube. It is right there. Okay, got that off. All righty, now you got this big contraption. All right, so here's our air intake here. Yes, it comes in from the frame, and we'll need to take this clamp off to get this entire boot thing off. We'll need to move this little reservoir box, kind of, I guess, a catch off. That'll get that out of our way. Now we got the little clamps on top of the boots that set on the carb. And these can be a bear to get back in, I know that much. Man, these lights. Might have to turn them down a little bit. Now we should have this big clamp right here. I really just want to get this box out of the way. It's just really kind of cumbersome. Now with this clamp loose and the two clamps on top of the carb, this boot should slide up and slide off both carbs. There, like that. Set that out of the way. There's a fuel line there going in to number 1. And what I want to do, how about we do this? The carburetor on the right, this one right here, is the one that feeds into the front cylinder. So I just want to turn the bike on, not start it, not crank it. I've got my starter solenoid out, but I just want the fuel pump to run to see if we get fuel out of this side. It could just be a clogged line, not letting fuel flow into that front. All right, got great fuel going to the front. Okay, that is not the issue, but I'm glad we checked. The one on the left side that feeds the rear, that fuel line is all the way up here in the front. Come on, Honda, why did you put stuff so crazy and tight in here? All right, you want to do this one too? I don't think this one's going to be an issue for us. Okay, yep, that's good too. All right, so we got fuel going into the carburetors. Now, after both fuel lines are off, we've got a little vent tube in the middle of the two carburetors. I know you can't see this, but you'll see it when I take it out. Now, the only thing holding the carburetors on are, of course, the throttle cables, our choke cable, the two clamps that hold the carburetors onto the actual motor. Looks like my choke cable might be in a bind there. That would prevent it from operating. Well, it's working a little better, but I think all the slack in this has it in a bind, and it feels like it's caught somewhere up in here. So let me get some pliers in here. This is a plastic kind of nut on this choke cable. Well, those lights do put off a little bit of heat. That's going to be nice in the winter. We'll pull this choke cable out. Oh, okay, that felt like it was stuck. There's our choke needle and spring that'll come out with it. That spring just kind of sets. I think our choke cable is binding up somewhere, not letting it do its thing. But anywho's in house, that's off. Okay, so on this carburetor here that feeds the rear, there is another choke right here. So I guess that choke cable has one cable that splits in two somehow, instead of a linkage that just operates both chokes. So I'm going to get in here, do the same as I did on the other side. Okay, so I took some things off. I took the horn off because it was just kind of in the way. It's just one bolt, 12mm bolt that holds the horn bracket on. Took the connectors off of the horn. Doesn't matter which way they go back on. Also, there's a little cover here that sits over the throttles linkage. 2 screws, 2 Phillips head screws. Took that off so that I could get up in here. So I took this choke out, just like on the other side. And the cable is still kind of in a bind. So I think it's in the routing that has got the chokes in the bind. So I'm wondering if this bike was fully choked when we started it. We got our linkages right here for our throttle. This is very, very loose. It should not be like this at all. So what I'm going to do here is back this 10mm lock nut off, and the same here. And then we can slide these cables off of this housing for this throttle body. There's no need in taking this bracket off. And this is the only thing left that is holding, that we have to remove to get our carburetors off. Now on this boot here, this intake boot, you have a clamp up here at top, and you have a clamp at the bottom as well that holds it on to the intake of the motor. What I want to do is just undo the top one and then pry this up and the other side as well. I want these boots to stay on, and it'll be easier to put the carb on with the boots already set and clamped down to the head on this motor. It looks like our idle might have been set a little high too. All right, so I got a 10 up here. Gosh, this big old water hose is in the way. I don't know why Honda tried to cram everything together in one place, but they did. They said, good luck, Bubba. I'm going to back this out quite a bit, and then you can push this cable out, push it off this little bracket thing, but it's hanging up on something. I don't know why. Why are you not coming out? What are you hanging on? Okay, you're just stuck. Now with that off the bracket, we can get that out of the way, and then we can just leave that hanging there. Do the same for this down here. It's got all this stuff in the way. There we go. It's got one there. Okay, that wasn't even tight. Didn't even need a wrench for any of that. Should be able to just slide that off and out of there. And then we can take this cable off here. Okay. So now everything is disconnected from our carburetors. Now I can just loosen this clamp. I want to loosen it quite a bit, but I don't want the screw to come all the way out. There we go. I'm going to go do the same on the other side. Then this carb is ready to lift up off the boots and we can slide it out. Then we'll go over and have a set down and see what's going on in these carbs. All right, that boot was not tight at all. I'm also going to look up the routing for that choke cable because I feel like it wasn't routed right and it's hanging up. Might be a bad choke cable, not sure. I know there's aftermarket cables with the two come together and you can do it on the outside. But now this carb should be ready to lift up. Since the customer had already come in here and rebuilt these carbs, I just pushed it up with my thumbs on that other side. I don't think these were setting down too good. Now we can just bring it out on this right side. Might have to jiggle and wiggle, but it should come on out. And do you come out over here or do you come out the top? Is that the deal? Okay. So it looks like these might come out the top easier. Oh yeah. Okay. Wiggle, wiggle, change the directions. There we go. Okay, so now I want to note my throttle assembly is on this side. So this is how it'll go back on the bike. So no need to mark them until you start tearing them down and breaking them down. But this is off. Now let's go look in this, see how our floats are, see if we need to order a rebuild kit. I wouldn't think so since he just rebuilt them, but let's just see what things are inside. Maybe a diaphragm's bad. I don't know. You know, a lot of folks that rebuild these carbs, they just focus on the float and the needles and the jets, and they forget about the diaphragms. If you got a cracked diaphragm, the bike will never run right. Never. Because your slide will not go up and come down, and that feels pretty rough. And yep, this was the front cylinder. This one, okay, look at the difference. We'll look at it more on the table. Feels good, sounds good, snaps back good. Now there's a way we can blow into this carb and watch this slide come up. But when you get over here to this slide, it has a catch. And it doesn't feel like there's much pressure. I bet there's issues with this diaphragm rubber up in here. And all these bolts here on the floats look to be new and replaced. And some of these on top do too. So maybe they did go into here. Maybe the diaphragm boot just wasn't set down on right and it's got a leak. Let me open up these reliefs and let fuel come out so that we don't get fuel all over our table. Okay, hopefully you can see what I see. And I want to start with this right here, the left side diaphragm. I see that looks new. All of these kind of look new in here. I think this might be an issue with us. Here is the vent that runs in. This is, of course, the intake, fuel intake for the rear and the fuel intake for the front. This is where the carb sets on the boot and the carb sets on the boot on the front. There's my throttle linkages. The carb's going to kind of set like that. I guess you could have took these off and took the whole bracket and thing off with it, but I just undo those throttle nuts because I believe we're going to have to adjust the throttle as well. A way you can test these diaphragms, and this just feels really rough, is to put your mouth over this hole right here and blow in. As you blow in, this should raise up, and when you let off, it should go back down. So let's see, this will let us know if we have an issue in the diaphragm up here. All right, what am I? Okay, I gotta put my finger over the choke hole. Okay, that's operating. But let's see how well this side does over here. Okay, a lot smoother over here. So let's just dig into this. I want to remember I got a little bracket here on this side. So I want to remember to put that back. But I just want to see what our diaphragm looks like. It might just be a peek and then putting this back on. So it looks like our needles inside were either replaced or cleaned. They look pretty good. And this diaphragm is under tension, so you want to keep a little pressure on the top when you take this last screw off. Not a lot of tension, but you know, there's a spring in there. Now what have we got here? Let's just take a peek. Okay, so this looks to be new. Okay, so this looks to have been replaced. It looks like it's seating well. It is in the correct orientation here. Okay, so I want to pull this out because that slide is catching. I want to make sure there's no burrs on this at all. That is a new needle. So far, so good. But do we have anything in here that might be holding us up? Okay, so far I'm not feeling anything. I want to look in here and make sure all this in here is cleaned out good from any old material. There's some old material right there that should have come out. Feels a lot better. Slide's a lot better too. Huh, must have just been maybe a little bit of trash in there. Now let's go ahead and take this bottom float off. Float bowl off, float cover. These are longer screws than what's on the top of the diaphragm. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, so you did replace the gasket, that's good, but there is a lot of trash in here. More than should be after a rebuild. So I'm wondering now about the filter, the fuel filter. Well, I can tell you right now, that's going to be our problem. I do not believe the float is supposed to set that low, but maybe so. Yeah, I believe that float's just setting a little low, which would cause this to fill up too much and cause a lot of excess fuel down into the intake, which would foul your plugs out, would make it to backfire out of the pipe like what we were experiencing. And I want to look at the specs for this, but I can tell you right now, that's going to be probably our issue. But see here at the height from this right here to this, and then when you look over here, well, I don't know, maybe a little lower. Yeah, quite a bit lower. It should not have any of this because as you run this bike, old trash in here like this will break free, and that right there is more than enough to clog your jets up. So even if you rebuild it, if you don't clean this stuff out, you're really just shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, this jet right here doesn't look to be replaced. This one here looks to be new as well. I'm going to hold them up and see if I can see light through these little side holes, and I do. And then through our main, it's got a little bit of a clog in it. That's better. I will blow that out and then spray that out and blow it out. I will probably be dropping all of this into our ultrasonic cleaner. Float out, that's a brand new needle. It looks nice and good. I'll go ahead and take that out. We'll make sure our little spring here is springing. It does. I do want to get this out that our main jet sets in, because there are also holes in this that don't need to be clogged. Now again, this is our good side. So we might find something over here in the bad side. But I believe that's a 7mm. And it is a 7mm. I don't know why this side wasn't replaced, but these weren't replaced either. Okay, that's clogged in a couple of spots. You got these holes here. 2 of these holes were clogged. And then of course this is just a hollowed out. That shouldn't be clogged. So we'll be cleaning that as well. Now let's start on this other side. Of course this needle seat looks to be new as well. And hopefully they replace the screen underneath there if it has one. I'm not sure. That one is good. Of course it's a big hole there. We'll take this out. Okay, this is our bad side. And this is completely clogged. There we go, it blew out then. So that wasn't doing anything. Now let's try this here, because this was not replaced. Yep, completely clogged on here as well. So that would have been a big issue on it not running correctly. Slide our pin out here. Our needle is new as well, and our seat as well. And these are put back in with this little tab here sticking up. So that'll set in here. That little tab rides right against this to prevent this float from going down too far. Now we will clean all of this out because I see trash. I see trash right there that should not be in there. That'll clog a jet up. Those holes in those jets are so small, guys. It's really not a thing of just taking old jets out, throwing new jets in, and putting it back on the bike. It's really a thing of cleaning. Not only just cleaning out where the fuel is going to lead up to the jets, but also cleaning out all these orifices, all your holes. You really got to spend time, cleaning this. When I see a proper carb rebuild, it'll look like a brand new carburetor. You'll see the outside looks clean, the insides are clean, everything's been replaced. So we definitely want to clean this up more than it looks right now. Now I do want to compare our jet sizes to make sure we have the right size jets in both, because the front cylinder jet has been replaced. All right, that's a 165 on our left side. Sometimes they're stamped on top, and I believe that one is right there. So I'll need to clean that up so I can see what that stamp is right there. Now I've just got a wet rock for my knife, and I use the smooth side and just put the needle down like that, the jet down like that, and just kind of go around it. That should clean it up enough to looks like they're different sizes. Yeah, that's a 160, and this one here is a 165. So these are two different size jets. Now our new one on the left is a 442 SD. All right, our one on the right is a 420 or 42 SD. Okay, so that matches. So I've got a different jet for the front than for the rear. This is a 160 on the rear, and this is a 165 on the front. So that could be an issue. Now, I'll get these to cleaning, but let me look up what jets should be in here. I don't think anything's been modified. The air intake's not been modified. The pipes are straight pipes, so they might have went up in jets for that, but it shouldn't have mix-matched. Shouldn't have different jets. I wouldn't think in the front and the rear, but let's see. Okay, so I pulled up the manual on this bike. There's my float level, 86 years, 1986 and on all models, is 9.2 millimeters or 0.36 inches. And that is measured from the flange of the carburetor itself, right where the main jet kind of is, and then the top of the float. Of course, you have to angle it and bring it back right when it touches, and that's where you'll measure. So that's our float height there. Now the main jet, which is the small jet, this right here. Okay, the main jet on a 88 through 96, which is what this is, a VT1100C, takes a 165. So the 165 is what was replaced on the front cylinder, and a 160 is on that rear cylinder. Now the VT1100C2s and the VT1100Ts have a different front and rear main jet. I don't know why that is on those models. I would think they would kind of be exactly the same kind of carburetor, but maybe there's something different in the C2 and the C. I thought the C2 was a California bike, but maybe not. Now on the slow jets, which is the long jets here that have been replaced on both, except the 85 and the 86 model, it is a 42. We're good there. Now I don't think that this carburetor has been rejetted, because your caps are still here for your idle air mixture screw. They've not been removed. And so I believe that this hasn't been monkeyed with as far as rejetting. I would like to see the jets that it's supposed to take the 165s in both, but we weren't having problems with the rear. The front has the correct jet size in it. So maybe it was just clogged up and the float was set a little bit off. Okay, so I got things cleaned up best I can, as you can see there. That ultrasonic cleaner really takes a shine to things. Now these are identical, so it should not matter, which way you put things on. And now we got everything cleaned up in here. We got all of our old jets and stuff cleaned up. We're ready to go back in. I've got a bowl of water here. This is our left side of the bike that goes to the rear. We'll dip this in here. We want to look for any bubbles that are coming out. Now, bubbles around the side are fine. That's just where the air was locked in there. But you don't want to see any bubbles coming out. And you want to feel good resistance, that it's not filling up with water. Okay, so that side's good. We'll try our treble side. Okay, so that's good too. If you're going to do this, water is fine to use. Just make sure you clean and blow all the water off. Also, a clear container helps because you're able to see through and it's not so dark in there. Now, some of you guys ask, well, what do you use to get your carburetor parts looking basically brand new? Let me show you. All right, so I've got this ultrasonic cleaner here and you can turn it on, but this button right here puts heat into this, and you can even set it for different seconds. I usually go all the way to the top, let it run, do its thing, and I'll do this probably 3 or 4 times before I take the parts out. Now in here, it looks nasty, but I don't ever change this out because I use straight concentration. And I'll show you what I use, but there it is. It's like got kind of a red hue to it. It's just a solution. Now when it comes out of here, it'll be tacky and sticky, almost like dish soap. So you'll have to take carb cleaner and just spray it off. Quick clean, or clean quick, broad range, quaternary, I don't know what that means. Sanitizer. It sanitizes, it disinfects, it deodorizes. So your carbs will smell better. That's important. No, keep out of reach of children. But I use this concentrate. I don't dilute it. I want the full shebang, the full strength, and it's been really good. I've never noticed it corroding plastics or rubbers or anything like that. So that's how those parts get cleaned up. As far as rust and stuff, it really works good. Now on this, you will have a little tray there that kind of keeps things together. But if you have something that's too small for that tray, no worries. It's just a flat stainless steel bottom all the way through there. As an example, I dropped this in as well. Just all one piece together. I didn't even take it apart. So I dropped this in and it turned out pretty good. And it didn't hurt the plastic. I actually cleaned it up pretty good. So that's what I used. I did not put this in the carb cleaner because I did not want to take it apart. I did take these out and the filters were replaced and they look good in there. But I cleaned everything out. I did clean out all my holes and all my orifices. I did go ahead and set this to 9.2 centimeters, which actually turns out on here to 0.92 millimeters. So I got it as close as I can. I even used my microscope to zoom in to make sure I was right. And so that should be our setting. When we set these, of course, it'll be right here in the middle, and we'll set it this way over the float. I can go ahead and already tell you, both were set way, way too high. Okay, so this is my right side. So it'll set on the bike like this. This is our treble side, the left. So let's just go ahead and start with this side. Now look at how low that sets. Now it's to be at an angle, and then you want it to where it sets down, but doesn't compress the spring. So that's going to be about right there. I'm going to take this, and boy, are we way off. Way off. I knew that did not look right. So we're going to have to raise this float quite a bit. Now, you could do it with it on there, but you could easily damage that needle seat as well. So I want to pull this out. Again, take this off, remove this, and I want to press this down. Stick this back on, put it back in. Now that brought it up quite a bit. Oh, yeah. Now let's see what we're looking at. I want it to make sure it's going down. Okay, so that there is too high. Trial and error thing. Now I'll just press this in a little bit. Try it again. All right, I got that back in. Let's see how we're going to set right there. And that right there is perfect. Perfect. So that is setting where it should. And that's going to be a lot better for us. Now all we have left to do is just put this bottom cap back on. Put our new gasket in like that. And I like to put the cap on up like this on my gasket. There's no fear of it falling out. And it should kind of seat in its place. And I can put my screws back in. Now I think my right side one was low as well. And that one's done. Make sure I hear my float coming back and forth. That's good. Get that seated inside there. All right, this looks a little low as well. Yep, it's going to be a little low. Not too bad. Not too bad. Maybe about right there. When you do these enough, you kind of get used to how much you need to go. If you're doing this for the first time or you're new to it, it's kind of a trial and error. And luckily, these pins slide in and out pretty easy. All right, let's set it right there. Oh, right on it. Right on it. Very good. Can't wait to hear if this makes a difference in the bike. Now the only thing we've got to do is to figure out that choke. I mean, it is a Honda. You usually don't need much choke on Hondas. And it's good to have new hardware here too. And I'll tell you, these lights are really, really nice. And we'll go down to where it touches and just a little bit past that. I want that idle to engage just a little bit, just to raise up a little bit so we got room to adjust it. Okay, there we go, guys. So everything sounds good. This thing is ready to go back on the bike. I've got church here in a little bit, so I'll be back with you in the morning. You won't know the difference. Might have a different shirt on, so let me try to get... I know this is the bottom. Nobody will ever see this, but I'll know it's there. And that'll bother me. That completes our carb rebuild, and that left side feeds the front. Jets were clogged up. Both floats were set way too low or set up too high, which let really too much fuel come in. That explains the popping and the cracking. So this bike should run a whole lot better. Now, let's go try to find that fuel filter. It should be after the pump. I don't know. It might be before the pump. I don't know. But we definitely want to change that out. There's a lot of trash in here. Unless the customer that rebuilt this didn't get out all the stuff that was in it before, and it just reclogged it once fresh gas got kind of broken up in there. Once that starter solenoid comes in, we'll put that in, and if everything goes well, then we've been successful at getting this bike back on the road. Okay, so before we throw the carb back on, I want to change that fuel filter because it was really dirty inside the carbs. And if he had cleaned the carbs out and then it got like that again, we just need a different fuel filter. I don't think the fuel filter has been changed on this. I know the pump has been. The fuel filter runs from the line before the pump. And the way they routed it on these 96 is the fuel filter is actually right behind the swing arm from the bottom underneath the airbox. And if you look down in here, I'll zoom in, but there is the fuel filter there. It's an inline fuel filter. And that looks like, I don't know, it's like some plumbing stuff. I think my best form of approach is to go underneath the swing arm here and just, well, that ain't even tight. Just move these clamps back on both sides, put some pliers on here to get it twisting, and then take this out. I'm curious to see if this is even a filter or just like a connecting pipe. Okay, so I got it out. And as I suspected, it's just a brass fitting. There's no filter in this at all. So any junk and stuff in the tank, or be it rust or dirt or whatever, is going right into that pump, which might have been the failure for the first pump and the need to replace the pump. So I'm going to look at the parts store and see if they have a filter that has, you know, this size. It looks like probably a 1/4 inch size. They carry a lot of lawnmower filters and things like that. So we have room, you know, if we need to go with a longer filter, there's room under there to do that. Okay, so I was about to go to the parts store and I remembered, hey, go look in your old truck, because I keep fuel filters in my old truck because it's an old truck. I had an extra one. I'm going to rob this and use this. It has an end marking where the fuel goes in and then the fuel goes out. It's roughly the same size as the fitting on this, although the barb on this is a little bigger. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using the clamps, I want to put some screw clamps on. I think that'll work a little bit better. Then I can, this is metal, so I can get it as tight as I need to. All right, so I got that new one in. It fits up in there really well. And it's kind of really solid. This fiberglass wrap is dry. My arms are tore up, itching. Oh, okay, so I was able to lube up the little lever or grip and get it off. It was really rusted up in there. And I got this choke lever thing off. This is broken right here, where this used to fit in here like so, and there's just nothing left for it to grip into. I mean, I could stick it up in there. Well, I don't know, guys. That might. I'm afraid with this piece broken off, it won't stay in there. I did take the cable apart and spray up in there. It seems like it's working fine now. Do you think that's gonna stay? That did not work. It kept popping out because there's nothing here to catch it. I'm gonna try to take my old soldering iron and solder a groove down in here on this side. Then waller out this hole at the bottom a little deeper. That way my cable end will fit down inside and will set in this groove. Well, you're not going to believe it, but it worked. It worked. Huh. All right, now we can keep trucking. Okay, here's our carburetor and throttle linkages here. So, see if I can hold my mouth right and remember how this went down inside here. Like a puzzle, like a puzzle. Oh, hold on, before I do this, before I get too far, let me get this choke line that is longer over here. I'll be careful not to drop nothing down in the intake, or we'll have a really bad day. Before we set the carbs down, put a little Nature's lubricant on there. Non-combustive, you know. All right, now, how do you go down without getting in a bind? I know you Honda guys are probably laughing at me right now. Okay, maybe let's try down this way. Get past. Hey, that seems to be the ticket. Right there. Yes. I think that's going to do it. I'm on this boot over here. Oh, there we go. I'm on that boot there. And that boot there. And that down there. I don't think these were setting on good. I think that might have been a large part of the problem. All right. Now, fuel lines, fuel lines, fuel lines. Okay, there's that one for the rear carb. Okay, there's this one for the front carb. Now our little vent tube. Where are you, little buddy? There you are. We'll run that back on. All right, now all we got left is our chokes and our throttles. I did clean the needles off on these chokes as well. Remember, they're plastic. You don't want them to be too tight. Where are you at? Oh no. Oh no. I did not have this up. Oh no. Dadgummit. I've got to pull this carb up. I've got this throttle cable stuck underneath the carb and this. These should have been up here. I did not check. When Honda went from the 2-carb to the single carb, I think everybody shouted hallelujah. That's a Honda owner. Now we can just tighten up our clamps. The way those clamps are grooved into the boot, they stay still for you, so that's good. You don't spin around in the back. I'll try to hold my mouth right. I'll tell you right now, if you want to work on Hondas and you got big mitts, big bear claws, forget it. Forget it. They do not make things for the big-handed man. Finally got that booger up in there. Ooh-wee. Now I just want to see which one's my pull. This one right here. So this is the one that's going to pull my throttle. That goes that way. This thing right here, I just want to bite it. These do look better though. All right, I like it. Now, before I put everything back together and something just not be right, I'm just going to put a funnel on this, put some fuel in it. That'll give us the ability to start this bike up. I don't know where our idle is set. We'll see. But let me get a funnel in here, put some gas in it, and we'll fire it up and see how it's going to do on us. We got our gas in here. Hook the battery back up. Should be able to touch these and start it. But I want the pump to run. It's got to fill that filter up, which is a pretty big filter. Then it's got to go up here so I can check for leaks and stuff. There we go. Okay. Don't see any leaks so far. That should have primed everything up. I did hear the pump get stronger and start to die down. That's good. It's letting me know my floats are working. Let me check that kill switch, make sure we're on run. Now I should be able to choke it. Bit more up on our idle. That's better. Choke's all the way off now. All right, that's the choke all the way off. I guess I just needed to set it up a little bit higher on the idle because I had to choke all the way up that first time and it wasn't sounding like the choke was on. So once I ran that idle up, everything is good. Let it warm up a little bit, pulled the choke back, let it warm up even more, took my idle back down. Hondas, they run at a higher RPM than your Harleys do. I think personally, running idle at a little higher RPM is better for the motor than that low chug, 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 chug. Really hard on your piston rods and all that jazz. So Hondas have a little bit of higher idle. But now we're good. We can go back in with this doodabby cover thing, kind of protects our cables and gives us a place to hook our plug wire into. But that's great. Everything went together well. Now how am I going to get you on? I don't know. Okay, not too bad. All right, guys. Everything seems to be turning out okie dokie. We'll take her down the road once that starter solenoid gets in here, and that's just a simple, snap it in the harness and connect these two, and then slide it back in that boot. That fuel filter in there is really going to help. Gosh, it's going to help a whole lot. Hey, little buddy. Stink bugs. Boy, do stink bugs stink. Now we've got this. Where did you go? Backwards up here. All right, let's get our horn hooked up. The direction does not matter on these at all. We'll get our bolts in. I believe that was a 12 millimeter, if my memory's right. Not an 18, a 12. Calm down. Calm down. I still see no fuel leaks. That pump sounded good when it got full and pressure was coming back. Our throttle seemed to be set well. Now we can put the tank on. Well, no, we got to put the boot back on. And this Alien, I think it's a little catch tank for condensation. All right, before we throw this boot on, I know that little reservoir thing had a couple of hoses. I think that's one. So I want to get it routed up here. Here's the other. Okay. Slide these in and on. That one's on. That one's on. Boy, this main wiring harness here is hard as a rock. And right in the way of that boot. Man, it's so stiff you can't. There's probably 100 wires in there. There we go. It went on. Very good. Let me tighten everything up. And now our Alien box sits up here with a 10 millimeter. Where'd it go? I don't know. Okay, so how do you sit down like that? Sure. Looks good to me. Okay, now we're ready to set our tank back on. We just got our fuel line here we got to get in, and this little breather vent hose. And then line our bolt holes up. We're good. All right, while we were about to put the tank on, Mailman showed up. Here's our new solenoid. And this rubber boot is not going to work on this. So I'm hoping this is exactly the same size so we can use our old boot. But there's our two wires there. Battery side, starter side. Very, very good. Okay, so here's the old one. It's got this nice cover on it. Okay, I need to depin this. So, and then just cut this off so I can get this boot off and put on here. Also, it does look like this right here is going to work for us very, very well. Perfect. Set down in there, slide that on there. But I want this boot on here because it's going to cover over this. Now I want to depin this, and I want to depin it one at a time so I don't get them backwards. So I'll depin one side, run it through, depin the other side, run the other side through. And these are very simple. You just take your pick, put in there, push that tab down and pull one out. And pull that out. Now when I put this back in, I want to take something and push that tab there back out so it'll catch and snap in there really good. Slide this baby on, lube this up a little bit. Slide that down, and that'll fit right over that. I'm going to go ahead and set this just on the bike so it's not hanging. There we go. Very good. This old one had a lock washer on it. I think I'm going to use that as well. And I want to be careful not to touch anything metal. Get our starter side going. Beautiful. We should have crank now on the starter button. Let's see. Great. And as you can tell, when I hit the key, the pump didn't run because the carbs were already pumped up and the floats were working. Alrighty, now let's get the tank on. We're going to set the tank up. This heat shield is right in the way of this thing. So I got to kind of hold this up, position the tank up there and try to get, this just don't pull out enough to get that. So I got to push the tank down in here. So I got to get some pliers to kind of hold the line so I can push the tank down in. Okay, now I want to get that vent line on first because it's got more room to move around. It's just kind of like a breather vent. Get this up. Oh yeah. It's easier than I thought. Kind of get her clamp up in there. All right, before we bolt everything down, let's give her a test. All right, now we can bolt our tank back down. And now I do need to fix the wiring on the fuel pump. Put some better connectors on there. Well, there you go, folks. We did it. Came in, no cranking, no running, no starting. When it did, one cylinder wasn't working. We went through all of our checks. We fixed everything that needed to be fixed. So this is now running and riding bike, ready to go. Let's turn it on. Let's push start. So I call that success. Thank you so much for helping me out in the shop, and stay tuned. I got a special video. Well, no, actually, you'll see the special video before you'll see this. Sorry, I'm an idiot. Tell your mama now I said hi.